Hello friends, welcome to Study Spectrum in Rohit Sir ki class. Today we are going to discuss about classification of the living things. Very first, tell me what is living things? We have already seen in our previous chapters how we can differentiate living things from non-living things. We are already surrounded by many things. All the things in our surroundings can be classified in two major groups, that is living things and non-living things. How do we classify them? We identify all the living things with their characteristics. Which are these characteristics? We have already seen there are 8 major characteristics of the living things, like cellular structure, movement, responsiveness to the external stimulus, growth, respiration, reproduction, excretion, death. By these major characteristics, we identify the living things and we separate them from non-living things. Now, when we start thinking about these living things, there are so many living things, right? Starting from each and every plant to each and every animal to microorganisms to unicellular animals, there is huge diversity, huge variety of living things. So, to study them better, we need to classify them. We need to divide them in the groups. That is called as the classification of living things. So, how do we do this classification? The very first classification is we can divide living things in two major groups, that is plants and animals. Now, how to classify plants further? How to classify animals further? We always classify on some criteria. Which are those criteria? There are similarities in the organisms, living things. There are some differences also in the living things. They differ from each other from the specific point of view. And there is a huge variety we can see in the living things. So on the basis of these similarities, the differences, this variety, we can generate these specific criteria. And on the basis of those criteria, we divide and we classify these living organisms, these living things in different groups so that we can study them better. Plants are classified with a specific peculiar system. There is a scientist named Carolus Linnaeus. All the credit of plants classification goes to this scientist Carolus Linnaeus, because what system he used to classify the plants, it is used today also worldwide. It is followed throughout the world. So the credit of plants classification goes to the Carolus Linnaeus. Today in our discussion, we are going to see the very basic criteria of the plants and animals classification. Let's start with the plants classification. How do we classify the plants? One criteria is, does that plant have flowers or not? If the plant have the flowers, we will call them as a flowering plants. And the plants which do not have flowers, we will call them as a non-flowering plants. So this is one criteria, and we have made already two groups, flowering plants and non-flowering plants. Which are the non-flowering plants? Let's make an experiment. Have a piece of bread, keep it in the box and close that box and leave it for the 2 to 3 days just at it as it is. After 2-3 days, when you open that box, what do you see? You can see there is a whitish or a grayish color velvet-like structure grown on the bread. That is called as the mold. It is also a plant structure, but it doesn't have the flowers. It grows through spores. Have you seen a herb of ferns? These are the plants which are very small in size and those do not have any kind of the flowers. But on the contrary, if we see a mango tree, yes, there are the flowers to the mango trees. A hibiscus plant, yes, there is a flower to the hibiscus plant. A rose plant, yes, there is a flower and the rose flower is very much famous, we all know that. So, this is how, on the basis of having flowers or not, we can classify plants in two subgroups, flowering plants and non-flowering plants. Let's see the next classification criteria. Once we have done from one criteria, from the point of view that whether that plant has flowers or not, we have already divided them in two subgroups, flowering plants and non-flowering plants. Now, there is another criteria also, the size of the plant, how their stem is. On the criteria of this, we can make four subgroups of the plants. The first group is trees, second shrub, third climbers, creepers, fourth herb. Now, from the size of the plant and the type of their stem, we can divide all plants into these sub-four groups. On the basis of size of the plant and their stem type, we can make these four subgroups. Let's see what are the trees. Have you ever seen the tree of mango, a tree of banyan, a tree of fig? These are the very big trees. They may be 10 to 20 meters in height also. Have you seen the coconut tree? How much it is in the height? We cannot even calculate. It is so high. And all these trees have the hard and broad stem. A guava tree or any other huge trees, a peepal tree. All these trees have a strong stem. Maybe old trees, if we see, those have so much broad girth stem that we even cannot hug. If we try to hug that stem, we cannot close our hands from another side. So, the trees, the plants which are very much big in size, having a very hard and strong stem, those are classified in this group. For example, mango, banyan tree, guava tree, coconut tree. Now let's see the next type, that is a shrub. What do we call as a shrub? Orange tree, lemon tree, hibiscus plant. These plants do not grow very much in the height. These plants have average height of 2 to 3 meters. They also have a strong and hard stem, but it is not very much big in the girth. It is a narrow one. We can hold it in the hands. So, a tree with 2 to 3 meter height with a strong and hard stem, but not so much in the girth, not so much in its circumference, those are classified into shrubs. All the orange, hibiscus, lemon trees, those are the example of shrubs. Now let's see the next type, that is climbers or creepers. The plants which have very weak stem, they cannot stand on its own accord. They need a support to grow on. Those are classified in this group, the climbers. Grape tree, then bittergourd tree and cucumber. All these are actually climbers. They spread along horizontally on the ground. If they get any support, then through that support they grow vertically. Otherwise, mostly all the climbers spread across the ground horizontally. And the fourth type is a herb. What are the herbaceous plants? Herbaceous plants are very small plants with at the most 1 to 1.5 meter height, not more than that. And they have a very flexible and soft stem. Such plants are always classified into the group shrub, herbs. The lemongrass tree, the basil tree, all the grams, these are the herbaceous plants. The ground pea, that is the herbaceous plant, because it has got the soft and flexible stem and its height doesn't grow more than 1 and 1.5 meter. So on the basis of height of the tree and its stem type and the branches, plants are classified in 4 subgroups: trees, shrubs, climbers and herbs. Let's see the next criteria. How we can classify the plants further? On the basis of their lifespan, for how many years they live. Their life cycle consists of how many years. Plants are classified in 3 subgroups. First is perennials, second biennials, and third one is annuals. What are the perennial plants? The mango tree or banyan tree, fig tree. They live for years altogether. Every year they bear the flowers, they bear the fruits. So once they are sown and they are grown, they continue to live for many years, and till the date they live, every year they bear flowers, the fruits. So in their lifespan, they have many life cycles of the flowers and the fruits. So such plants are called as perennial plants. What are the biennial plants? Biennial plants are those plants which have their life cycle of 2 years. They bear flowers and fruits only once in a 2-year life cycle, and they can bear flowers and fruits only once throughout their life cycle. Once they have flowers and fruits, then slowly that plant dries up and dies. It cannot live to bear another life cycle of flowers and fruits. Those plants are called as biennial plants. Which are those? Carrots, radish, beetroot plant. These are the biennial plants. Now let's talk about the annual plants. What are those? Annual plants are the plants which have a life cycle of 1 year. In 1 year they grow and they bear the flowers, they bear the fruits, and their life cycle ends over here. In a single year they complete their life cycle, and once they have flower and fruits, then they cannot continue living to bear another cycle of flowers and fruits. They start drying slowly and they die after having fruit once. Those called as the annual plants. Which are those? Wheat plant, jowar plant, bajra plant, maize, all these are actually annual plants. They complete their life cycle in the 1 year. Let's have an example of all these 3 types of the plants once again. What are the perennial plants? Mango, peepal tree, banyan tree, fig tree. These are the perennial plants. They live for many years and they bear the life cycle of the flowers and fruits of many such life cycles in their lifespan. Biennial plants are the plants which complete their life cycle in 2 years and bear flower and fruits only once. Beetroot, radish, carrots are the biennial plants. And plants which complete their life cycle in 1 year and they bear only once flowers and fruits, those are called as the annual plants. Maize, wheat, bajra, jowar are the annual plants. So friends, for classification of the plants, we have seen 3 different criteria. First, whether they bear flower or not flower. Second, how much is their height and the stem type, and third, for how many years they live and for how many times they can have flowers and fruits. According to that, we can bifurcate, we can classify plants in such subgroups: flowering plants and non-flowering plants. Another criteria: trees, shrubs, climbers, herbs. Another criteria: perennial plants, biennial plants and annual plants. This was about the classification of the plants. Now let's go ahead and see how we can classify the animals.
No more spending your energy and money on coaching classes or missing classes for rain, for rally and any other nonsense. Subjects covered by multiple teachers with repeat telecasts. Doubts, concepts, applications, no problem. All explained through great and significant animation. So sit back comfortably in your home and watch Study Spectrum TV channel.
So let's see how we can classify animals also. Now, tell me, which is your favorite pet? It may be a puppy, a dog, or a small kittens, or maybe some other pet. But can you imagine having a lion or tiger as your pet? Can you have a lion at your home? No, we cannot have. Why? Because some of the animals are domestic. They can be our pets. Those are not harmful. But some of the animals are wild animals. They are harmful to us. So they live in the jungle. We cannot have them as our pet in our house. So the first criteria is like this: whether those animals can be our pets at our home or not. We can subdivide the animals into two groups: domestic animals and wild animals. In domestic animals, we can have hens, ducks, cats, cow, buffaloes, cats, dogs. What are the wild animals? Lions, tigers, panthers. All these are wild animals. We cannot have them as our pet in the house. So this is one criteria to classify the animals. Let's see the next one. According to, we have already seen the living organism have the cellular structure. So we can further divide the animals in two subgroups: unicellular animals and multicellular animals. What are the unicellular animals? The animals which consist of only one single cell. Their whole body is only that one single cell are called unicellular animals. Which are those? Amoeba, paramecium are the unicellular living things, unicellular animals. Now, what about the multicellular? The animals which have millions of cells. Their body is made up of many cells. Those are multicellular animals. So there are n number of multicellular animals surrounding us. To start with, we can have an example of fishes. We can have an example of birds, or we can have an example of other animals like dogs, cats, cows, buffalo, lion, panthers, human beings, snakes, lizards, chameleon, earthworm. All these are multicellular animals. So on the basis of whether they are made up of only one single cell or many cells, we can classify the animals in these two subgroups: unicellular animals and multicellular animals. Let's see the next criteria: where they live, what their habitat is. Have you ever imagined that fishes are walking on the road? No, right? Because fishes only can survive in the water. They live in the water. We see fishes in the rivers, we can see fishes in the sea. In a fish tank, even if we keep the fishes, we first have to fill that fish tank with the water. Without water, they cannot survive over there. So fishes live necessarily in the water. What about the dogs? Dogs live well on the ground. What about the human beings? We live well on the ground. On the land, we can dwell well. What about the water? Can you imagine going into the swimming tank, deep down, and sleeping there for the 8 hours? Can we do that? No. Can cat or a dog do that? No. We need water for our living, but we cannot live inside the water. We only live on the land because we can live in the air, the atmosphere. We need air for the respiration, which we do not get inside the water. What about the frog or a lizard or a snake? Yes, they can live on the ground as well as they can live in the water also. Means, according to the habitat, where do these animals live? We can divide them in 3 major parts. The animals which can live only on the land are called terrestrial animals, like lions, tigers, human beings, cows, buffaloes, dogs, cats. All these are terrestrial animals. The animals which can live only inside the water, those are called as the aquatic animals. All the fishes are aquatic animals. Octopus is an aquatic animal. It needs water to live. Now, the animals which can live on both the habitats inside the water as well as on the land also, those are called amphibians. They can be on the both parts. That is called amphibian animals. Frog is an amphibian animals. Some kind of lizards, some kind of the snakes are the amphibian animals. They can live both on the water and ground also. So this was the third criteria. According to their habitat, we can divide the animals in these 3 subgroups. Let's see the next criteria. Whether they have vertebral column or not, we can subdivide animals into 2 subgroups, vertebrates and invertebrates. Now, what is the vertebral column? If you can run the finger on the back, on the middle of the back, from neck to downwards, we can feel there is a chain of bones, right? This is called as the backbone. This is the vertebral column. Each and every small bone is called as the vertebra, and there is a chain of such vertebrae which makes that vertebral column. But if you go and see it into the octopus, are you going to feel that vertebral column in octopus? No. So there are some animals which have the backbone, which possess the vertebral column. Those are called as the vertebrates. And there are some animals which do not have any such vertebral column. Those are called as invertebrates. Which are the vertebrate animals? All the human beings, all the monkeys, all the cows, buffaloes, all the mammals rather, are vertebrate animals. Even fish, lizards, some fishes, some amphibians, birds, these all have their own vertebral column. Man, monkey, elephant, lion, fishes, lizards, these are vertebrates. We can classify these animals into the group of vertebrates. Now, which are the non-invertebrate animals which do not have the vertebral column? Amoeba, snails, cockroaches, insects, spider. These animals do not have vertebral column. So, on the basis of backbone, having backbone or not, we can classify the animals in these 2 subgroups, vertebrates and invertebrates. Let's see the next criteria. Covering of the body. How the body is covered, how the skin is covered of the animals. On the basis of that, we can subdivide the animals into different kind of groups. The very first, if you see the outer skin of fishes or snakes or lizards, there are the scales from outside on the skin of these animals. So these are the animals which are covered with the scales. But if you see monkeys or a bear, their body is not covered with the scales, but their body is covered, their skin is covered with a hair. There are many hairs on the body. So these animals are covered with the hair. What about the birds? Are they covered with the hair? No. If we see at the birds, they are covered with the feathers. So according to the covering of the body, we can subdivide animals into three subgroups. The animals covered with the scales, the animals having covering of the hair, and the animals having the covering of the feathers. Which are the animals which are covered with the scales? Lizards, snakes, fishes. Which are the animals which are covered with the hair? Human being, bear, monkeys, lions. Those having the hair, which is called as the fur. Which are the animals which are covered with the feathers? All the birds are actually covered with the feathers. Let's see the next criteria of classification. How the birds reproduce? They actually lay eggs. Then they hatch them for some peculiar time. After hatching, the young birds come out of those eggs. So, birds do reproduce via eggs. But how do a cow reproduce? How do lions reproduce? How do cats or dogs reproduce? They reproduce directly the young ones. They do not lay eggs. The growth of the small kittens is taken place inside the body of mother cat, and it gives the birth of young kittens. They do not lay eggs. So on the basis of how animals reproduce, we can classify the animals in two subgroups, oviparous and viviparous. What are the oviparous animals? The animals which actually reproduce via laying eggs and hatching them. For example, the sparrow, snakes, lizards. These are the animals which actually reproduce via laying eggs and hatching them. Now, what are the viviparous animals? The animals in which the growth of young ones is completed inside the body of mother, and mother actually gives birth to the young ones. Those all animals are called as viviparous animals. What are the examples of viviparous animals? Human beings, cat, dog, lion. These all mammals are actually viviparous animals. So friends, we have seen 6 different criteria to classify the animals also.